everybody. So today we're doing something a little bit different to what we would normally do online. We're going to be running a distance session, a distance healing session. The concept as to why I'm running this session today is a group focus. So just working through intention that whoever is joining us on this broadcast and whoever is needing the healing focuses that we bring in today, that you find benefit from the healing session. Today is more a demonstration of how we could run a healing session, a specifically distance healing session. This is my faithful distance session buddy. Essentially, we use Bear as a surrogate. So with the surrogate, we are able through intention to connect to any person or anything that is necessarily needing the actual distance session. So from today, the whole concept that we've been working with, or what's been coming through quite strongly, 2020 is essentially being focused on as a master year. A lot of people, or I find that in the field at the moment, there's a lot of information coming through about people wanting to make really significant changes. And essentially the most powerful and most truthful changes come in through your interaction and your focus. So in allowing this distance session to happen today, we're going to contribute to whatever comes through as a distance healing session priority. Priority is essentially almost like a domino effect, that when we focus on the priority of the session, we're focusing on the most important healing focus in whatever we're working with, whether it be physiological, whether it be emotional, whether it be mental. So when we work with the priority of the sessions, the body responds very differently in relation to the idea of being nurtured into the healing or nurtured in healing. For my own personal focus this year, a lot of what is coming through quite strongly for me is the concept of nurturing, being nurtured, nurturing, acknowledging that through nurturing we can access very dramatic levels of healing, very dramatic levels of change, and we're actually focusing on a lot of frequency vibrational influences of love and joy and gratitude, which in their own vibrational frequency are incredibly powerful. So before we start the session, anybody who is watching the video today will receive the healing benefits of the session, even though you haven't specifically mentioned anything that you're wanting to work with. My intention for today's distant healing session is to resonate with the group of what is aligning and what information is coming through, that we are able to benefit physiologically, emotionally, mentally, etc. through this session as a focus group. So in that being said, there are some of you that may resonate with what we do today, some may not. Some of you may identify with specific aspects that we're working with, some may not. So that is absolutely fine. What I really do encourage for you to do today is just to connect to the session's experience. If you've never worked with distance healing sessions before, just enjoy it. There's nothing that you're needing to do specifically. You can basically lie down and just relax and listen to the session. You can watch the session if you want to, or if you want to just sit in a meditative space or experience to let the session run and just feel within your own body what you're experiencing. That space is really up to you as your own unique interaction with the experience. So essentially what we're going to do now, we're going to start off the session just as a clear focus point. The reason why I chose today, the 4th of January at 4 o'clock, when I was doing some research on the 2020 influence, and just from a numerological influence, the 4 stood out as a very profound and focus point of this year. So I've played around and just had some fun with the concept. So that's why we're running 4 Jan at 4 o'clock. So let's see what it does. Okay. All right, let's see what we can do. So Bear's very kindly offered to run as a surrogate. So when we work through the session today, because it is more of a demonstration, I will explain what I'm working with as I reach specific aspects of the session. Again, just allow the session to run and allow the information to be heard and listened to. And if you've got questions, just pop us a message afterwards. We're not going to run a question and answer session today. So for all of you who are with us, welcome, and let's see what we can do. All right. Okay, so essentially what I'm doing is just allowing my body field and my mind to relax more into an alpha frequency. When I work with the channeling and when we work with the distance healing sessions, it's a lot more accessible to or a lot easier to access the information when we work in that alpha frequency. It's essentially explained as more of a meditative frequency, but I find in that frequency a lot of stuff changes, a lot of stuff connects a lot differently, and we're essentially able to reprogram and reconnect the energy communication centers. All right. Okay, so in today's session, our main theme or our prioritized theme is alignment. So specifically from a more energetic approach, it's showing as a chakra communication and synchronization. So when we work with the chakras and when we bring them into balance, we're working with the concepts of essentially resynchronizing how the chakras will communicate in relation to how their torsion fields actually run. So within the group, what is coming through quite strongly is that the chakras and their torsion fields are very out. So we've got a lot of chakras that are very open, which is more the sacral and more the third eye and crown, which makes sense because especially with us coming into a new year, we're very spiritually open to change, and we're very spiritually open to receiving new information and new experiences, and just be very open to the concept of connecting with our environment. So that would definitely make sense as to why the crown and the upper chakras are very connected. In the same breath though, the solar plex chakra has got a lot of frustration, sensation to it. So almost as though as excited as we are to receive new experiences and connect to new opportunities and goals and focus and our field of manifestation that we can bring into manifestation, there's a lot of fear sitting into that solar plex. So when we work with the frequency of fear, essentially physiologically it shuts down a lot of muscle tendon ligament connection, basically the concept of being frozen in fear. So in that, especially with the muscle tendon ligament concept, they're governed by the wood element. So wood element also contributes to a lot of change. The wood element works very much with the concepts of the pioneer archetype, which we're actually tuning into with the 2020. So the pioneer is the concept of kind of like just grabbing your things and we're just going to go on this amazing adventure. We may have a basic understanding of what may be out there, but we actually don't know what is there, what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, but we've got this really keen excitement to be part of it. So what we're going to start off with here is essentially just working with a cranial rebalancing. So the fascial tension that's running in the solar plexus is affecting quite deeply into sinus, which is showing up quite strongly in the group, either as like a hay fever response or just like an environmental sensitivity. So either tighter sinuses than normal, or a runny nose, or hay fever symptoms, or just a heightened sensitivity into that sinus point. This is more of a interaction between the stomach and the spleen, specifically running through the meridian transition points in that solar plexus. This is specifically where the fear response or matrix is sitting. So we're just going to realign. Now, when we work with the fascia response and integration, we don't look at changing or fixing anything. We work with the body's natural ability to heal itself very strongly, and we give the body and the person and the being a very strong recognition that they're actually able to connect with that innate sense of healing very quickly. So when we work with the concept of the body naturally expressing itself in whatever that physiological expressional state may be, it is absolutely fine. So we work with the concept of neutrality. So in neutrality, specific to the fascial response and integration system, my experience is that when we focus on neutrality through a system, through a communication link, through a physiological and system and organ sensitivity and communication sequencing, essentially what happens is that whether that system is needing to realign, reconnect, or readjust, rebalance, whatever that system is needing, essentially it receives from the session, instead of the practitioner intending what they feel needs to be worked with. Okay, so here, even though we are working with an influence into spleen, there's a lot of stomach, which can also be a part of perhaps the poorer side of our diet this festive season. So we'll just get that stomach moving a bit and able to digest all the foods and all the yummy experiences that we've had. So it's an interesting thing, because as we're working with the realignment and the neutrality response and observation through the solar plex, stomach, spleen, sinus response and zygoma positioning, there's a lot of jaw tension. So essentially what we're working with, and this will go also into the concept of the diaphragm. Okay, so into the contraction through that diaphragm, it's pulling right through into a tight center point into that solar plexus. So we're working with the concept of just allowing the freedom of expressing and the freedom of experiencing. So what it's showing specifically in the jawbone tension that is showing up as a secondary influence from the sinus release is that even though we're feeling really excited and really connected with the concepts that we're working with and the ideas that we've got in mind, we're feeling very stuck in actually how to express, how to get that information out, how to essentially, almost like you're locked in the opportunity to just speak your truth and to speak your wisdom, and also to speak what you're needing in order to receive or to reconnect with your desires. Breaking away, that's another thing that came through quite strong earlier, is a lot of people, and the consciousness push at the moment, a lot of people are breaking away or realizing the need to break away with very set programs that are not theirs. They've picked it up either from their family or through schooling systems or through their environment, their career, their work colleagues. So this comes in very strongly with the almost like the gentleness in being able to identify the patterns that you're ingesting and that the stomach's not being able to process and work with, and that the information is causing a little bit of a stomach irritation, that you're actually not stomaching the information that you're receiving or that you're working with that easily at the moment. It's not burdening the system per se, but there is definitely an irritation. And then that will also go through into TMJ. Now TMJ is a reciprocal, it's not coming up specifically yet in the session as healing, but just from an interesting perspective, the TMJ and the lower back work as reciprocals. So a lot of you, what what I'm actually getting is that a lot of lower back aching or sensitivity, or mid back, more the sacrospinalis, the muscle either side of the spine, there's a lot of tension sitting in there. And when we look at essentially how we're actually taking bite sizes out of our experiences and out of our lifestyles, maybe we're actually over chewing those experiences, and it's creating a lot of excess connection and over tensing of the TMJ or the jaw muscles. So we're actually going to work through that now. Let's just see how it wants to align itself. Okay, so we're going to connect TMJ here with inner aspect of the eye, which is essentially part of bladder meridian. Okay, so this is an over tensing of the actual cranium, so almost like the cranium being in a fascial jamming. So the little bones that make up the skull, we've got little connection zigzags, and they should essentially be able to move very slightly to create vibrations for the expansion and contraction of the skull and movement of the brain. Especially coming now into the full moon, our water systems are really active, so there's a lot of pressure in the brain side of things. And if we're quite snotty, or if the system is very mucus full, which I'm seeing a lot of in the mind space, the mind cannot process clearly, it cannot receive information clearly, and it kind of gets bogged up with the snot and the snottiness that is in there. So the synapses can't actually fire clearly or clear enough. So you're getting like this broken record information. So you may have the experience, the only way that it shows as a metaphorical comparison is that you may be experiencing certain interactions with people or experiences that you're having, and they make sense, but then they kind of distort, and you feel as though you can't relate to them. So you create a thought pattern around them to understand what you've experienced, and in that it creates a whole different story, because from that you're building in belief systems and perception and just your own placement of thought patterns. So it creates a lot of almost like over churning in the mind space of things. So we're going to work at a complete, this is more right hand side. So the right hand side also very slightly in this healing release or in this healing neutrality that we're going to link up now, it's showing that especially from the right side of things, people are very overthinking how to move forward and how to put a structure in place for moving forward, how to align better, how to focus better, how to connect better, just essentially trying to almost overemphasize how they can do better. When in actual fact, just understanding the nurturing of exactly where you are and all that you've accomplished right now is plenty sufficiency. All right, so we're going to run a cranial release here. Okay, so bear's a lot easier to work with. We'd work this slightly differently on a human person, but we're going to just work with a neutrality observation through that cranium. So some of you who are quite sensitive may actually feel the cranial release. It feels like a pressure release of the brain and a pressure release of the mind. This will release into TMJ. Okay, TMJ is going to link through into a fascial neutrality into the stomach. So the stomach lining may feel a little bit almost bloated or sensitive in this movement, because we're actually connecting through this whole half intermediate fascial stabilizer, running through sacral, running through solar plexus chakra and diaphragm point and stomach spleen meridian transition point, and we're going to go down through into stomach and into that hip aspect. So there's quite a lot of fascial stability that is actually being neutralized, almost that the fascial stabilizers are connecting incorrectly, and this may make you feel even slightly off balance. So we're going to run a intermediate fascial stabilizer reconnection shortly. We're just going to finish with the neutrality through the cranium here. All right, so this will go quite strongly into the teeth. The main teeth that are being released are the molars at the back, which is a lot of the areas of the mouth that are very, very strongly influenced by the metal and the metal elements, which is very sensitive to mucus. So again, mucus is coming up here. All right, so we're going to run a lymphatic clearing or cleansing onto the sinus system. All right, so this will go more, again, hands in hand with the concept of the oversensitivity in the sinus that was coming through earlier. We're going to work with the lymphatic cleanse in relation to the hydration response of the lymph fluid through the sinus cavity, that the actual cells in the sinus cavity, the mucous membranes, are hydrated and nourished, so that the information that they're picking up through the frequency of smell is clear, it's received, and it can actually be received. If the mucous membranes and the sinus linings are very, very dry, the ability to receive the frequency information of the environment is altered. So we're going to run again a neutrality observation here, but we're bringing in more of a softer aspect or a softening aspect, just to soften the sinus. This will also go into the sinus bones and the front of the cranium. The female sex organs, in terms of the tip of the nose with the clitoris reciprocal, that is coming through quite strongly here. So for our female viewers, it's showing that there's a lot of almost like feminine reproductive organs and body parts that are really needing attention, but attention not through a health perspective per se, but more a recognition and nurturing. So connecting back into specific here to the females that are viewing, reconnecting back into the feminine aspects and just everything that feminine has to offer. Here, specific to the female viewers, what's coming up is that there's a lot of pressure to be a female and to be able to present the feminine aspects to the world in authenticity. So that's a really lovely place to start in just kind of reconnecting with, you know, the beauty that the female is. And what she offers to her masculine part in relation to the nurturing and the creativity and the prosperity and the, you know, just the visions and the excitement and the passion, so that the masculine can support her and lift her up, but in the same breath help to structure her visions into a really clear and strong manifestation. All right. So here again, we've gone back into TMJ. Left aspect of the cranium is not coming up specifically to be treated yet, but the left TMJ is linking and needing to be reconnected with its expressional communication sequencing and the neutrality in that sequencing into the occipital, so the base of the neck and the base of the skull. So here the base of the skull is showing that it's more a it's kind of sitting in between the C1, C2 influence, which is a lot of your brainstem influence. So if the C1 is jammed or tilted or off-center position, it puts a lot of pressure on the brainstem, and it can affect a lot of different communication sequences in the body. So the natural physiological expressional state will be affected quite severely. So I'm going to run, let's just see, we're going to run a neutrality or a relaxation intention into that C1 and C2. So we're going to bring this through into the top of the nose. Again, just a lot of cranial pressure that's in the group today. You guys must stop thinking about things so seriously, just have fun. So that's also what we're doing with the session today. I really enjoy distance sessions because they're just so powerful. All right, so let's see here. Okay, so here we're going to work with the neutrality, essentially with the concept of almost allowing space. So the space in the structural support through different perspectives. So that's coming up quite strong. So as you turn your head, all the cervical vertebrae are very important to have different perspectives. That different perspective will also be a really good proprioceptive balancer. So bringing our proprioceptive senses back into balance and neutralizing the oversensitivity in relation to the fight-flight response that we live in, which is the high-stress environment. So we're looking more to create a more coherent frequency, receptivity, and response communication system between the C1, C2 at the moment. Alright, let's see here. Alright, so again, this is bringing in the molars at the back. So we're just working with a mucus release or kind of movement. So the water system was coming up quite a bit today as well, which will make sense with the hydration systems being a bit off. And when we refer to the hydration system with the fascia, it's not necessarily how much liquid or fluid you're drinking, but more how the cells are actually responding to that fluid to be able to use that fluid to actually function. So it's more how the cells receive the nourishment of the fluid and the water that they can use it for their reproduction and all their different cellular functions. We're not going to go into a lot of that right now. Okay, so this is coming into throat. Throat, we're working more from a physiological perspective here. Okay, so kind of with the concept of the epiglottis, all the different organs that will sit into that throat area. So again, very much the expressional ability or the ability to express is coming through quite strongly here. Alright, so we're going to run a neutrality observation. So here we're going to work it as more of a slower release, which is quite interesting. There's part people or a few people in the group that need this as an instant adjustment. So I'm going to run a parallel release timeline on that for you, if that makes any sense. For the main part of the group that needs this as a slow release, we're going to run it as a slow release in terms of resetting the fascia. Alright, so here Bear is moving. Alright, this is his fascial repositioning. I'm not moving him, which gets a bit strange, but it's really cool. Okay, so he's working more with the spiral realignment, which is the full body's energy body torsion field reset. Okay, that's pretty cool. Alright, so working with the throat in the neutrality, so we're intending to neutralize any contributing, supporting, or influencing aspects of this physical expression. So the physical expression that was coming through for Bear is just all the areas here in the throat are just feeling really strangulated. So we're going to bring in a neutrality focus there just to allow that area to fully relax and just soften so that it can actually function a bit better. Alright, this is also coming through as a lot of hormonal aspects within the group. Again, very strong in the feminine, so we might have a lot of females on this viewing today, or who are going to be viewing this. Alright, but men, it doesn't mean that you're left out here. You also need to express your voice and express it within the masculine authenticity. So we're going to support that as a duality, or as a dual influence here through masculine feminine polarity and communication sequencings, which is actually what's coming through anyway, so that's pretty cool. Alright, working into the throat here, we're working over quite a number of different meridians. Lung is coming up quite strongly. Alright, let's see if there's a keyword there. Alright, so this is also past, which is quite interesting. So with the lung meridian, lung works with the concept of chi, the life-giving force of chi. Chi is part of the life force energy. So working with blood, moisture, and chi, they're essential to basically us being here. So we're going to work with a chi recognition, and a chi comes through as a chi response. So when you're breathing, not necessarily just to breathe, but to actually understand the life force that you're encouraging and inviting into the body. So as you're breathing in all the information and all the nourishment that is in your environment, which is an incredibly beautiful and special gift to be able to do so automatically. We do it without thinking. So just as a bit of a heads up while we wait for the neutrality to release here, okay, this is a release into the back of the cervical spine. This is going more into C7 as a spatial orientation release. All right, there we go. There's full bladder release that's coming through here. That will be back line, your back line of the body. Okay, so in the back fascial zone, we've got a lot of water influences, and we've also got a lot of the triple heater influence along the spine. So there's a lot of emotional release that is needing to happen within this group. It's showing, or it's feeling through the physiological responses of the system, almost as like a desperate need just to let go, like just to stop the emotional intensity. That's how it's explaining itself. So with the emotional intensity, we can work a lot with the concepts of the water pathway. So the bladder, the kidney. So you can do a lot of like nice back stretches, and then also just opening up the water systems in the body and just understanding that everything's fine. All right, this will also release a lot of pressure off the cranium. He's going to come through to a seated position. Okay, so the tapping, what we're working here is that we're just tapping in the releases that we've had here so far into the heart matrix and the heart field, just to reset the frequency so that we can actually encourage the body to send all the new information with familiarity into all parts of the body. And all the cells, that the cells receive the information. Okay, so again, another cranial release. This is just cranial build-up and pressure. I hope you guys have managed to have a really nice, relaxed holiday because you're all feeling really stressed. So I hope that you're managing to get some rest before we return to normality. Shane Bear's laughing because he's like, yo, you guys are really uptight. Okay, all right, I'm going to run so we call this almost like a shimmering. So essentially what it does is that it just awakens the tissue. So we're going to work on either side of the spine. This will be influencing into the bladder meridian, but it's specifically focusing into the triple heater. And this will bring in a lot of just opening up in the heart because it works with the fire element. Very much joy and sadness, but the balance in all of that. So the balance in joy and the balance in sadness, and kind of that they each have their nurturing aspect and part to play. So we're going to just open up and waken up that tissue. All right, so that's right against vertebra. Okay. Alright, so we're going to run an opening sequence here, an opening communication sequencing, an opening of the communication sequencing pathways, which will just encourage the synapses through the neural feed in the spine to run more clearly, consistently, and coherently. So the information that it's working with will be received with a lot more gently and clearly, so that the body can actually function more from a physiological perspective, a lot more harmoniously. Okay, so shoulders also are coming in quite tight here. So we're going to do a shoulder release that we run in the fascia, which is really effective. So we're essentially going to cradle the front of the shoulder in the hands, and we're going to position underneath that scapula. What we run here is a fascial neutrality. So again, working with the concept, whether it needs to realign, release, or reconnect, just to open that up. This, in terms of the group, is going to take a lot of pressure off the chest, opening up diaphragm, opening up the breath capacity. So it's actually releasing right through into all the intercostals, into the rib cage, and right into the actual bones of the ribs that they've just been holding too much tension. All right, and then anyone with shoulder and neck pain, this should really contribute to the release there quite nicely. Okay, here's a reconnection of a reciprocal He's doing it through a fascia stability activation, which is quite interesting. Again, I'm not moving bees, so this is where it gets a bit fun. But we're working with a reconnection of the intermediate fascial stabilizer. We're going to run them in almost like parallel influence so that it will affect both sides, but it's specifically relating to right shoulder, left hip. So the movement through all aspects and through life experiences and the flexibility of movement through the hip and life into how we actually load the responsibilities of that movement. So bringing in a more holistic way of how we work with the concepts of needing to be flexible but needing to be supported at the same time. Okay, that release can give you a bit of a headache, so if we've got anyone experiencing a bit of a headache, it's absolutely fine. All right, so we're going to work with a coccyx realignment. Coccyx realignment, we're going to go into influence here again, into sinus and into the different orbital influences here. This will also release a lot of eye tension that's been experienced. Okay, so the actual coccyx, it's coming up quite strongly that there are quite a few people in the group with coccyx that are slightly off position, so that they're off centered. This can happen really easily. So if you fall on your coccyx quite hard ever in your life, also with the fight-flight response, the coccyx tucks under as a fear response from the physiological skeletal structure. So we're just repositioning that. So the coccyx, for those of you who are quite sensitive, this may feel a little bit strange, but this will release a lot of pressure into the pelvic girdle. All right, sure. Nice release off the neck there. Okay, so we're going to turn him over. We're going to do a sacral release. All right, buddy, there we go. Okay, so in the sacral release, in the glute aspect, the glutes are so closely connected to the concept of emotions in the body. There's a lot of fire aspects in the glutes, and then also in the glutes, specifically to the piriformis, the soleus, they're all very soul experience connections. So they can hold a lot of tension, and then because of the fine connection of the glutes onto the actual sacrum, they can what word am I looking for now? So we'll restructure the sentence. So essentially, with the connection that can happen here, if you get too much tension on the glutes onto that sacral area, it can actually move the sacrum, it can tilt the sacrum, it can tuck the sacrum, and it can actually, what I always call kuxsister, which can twist and bend. So you can actually get a really distorted pelvic expression just from having those muscles of the glutes over connected and just not communicating correctly. So we're going to work on the concept of nurturing the neutrality of that physical expression. So the natural physiological expressional state of being we're going to work with here. All right, this is going to release really nicely. We've got a real good softening influence coming through into the front of the pelvis. Again, pelvis showing up really, really tight. More into like if we can give a positioning in comparison to the females with the ovaries. Okay, so working into the front of the pelvic area, just above that pubic bone. So working into hip flexors here. Hip flexors are showing up really strong in the group as over connected and over tight. That will adjust your hip, knee, leg communication sequencing. So it can adjust your gait, it can adjust your feet, it can adjust the Achilles, and consciously the body consciousness connection of the Achilles is essentially the support structure for your life. So you want to really look after that one and just have things running smoothly there. All right, so this will have a secondary influence into ITB. There's a lot of knee stuff coming through. So we're just going to connect back of knee, popliteus. We're going to connect that into the little bone and dimple at the back. I'm not going to use anatomical terms for those of you who don't do anatomy, but at your lower back, you've got those little dimples. We're going to connect that with the main top point of the hip, and we're going to run a neutrality communication sequencing right through that leg. This will release hamstrings, it will release right up into the pubis or underneath the glutes, and it will have a secondary influence into the anal tract, specifically to help with the large intestine to process, and then also helping to just release into the pelvis. Okay, so this is also going into lower back. We're going to have a lower back adjustment there. Remember, the adjustments are quantum adjustments. Your body will never move what it cannot move, or what it does not want to move, or what it is not ready to move. And that is what makes the fascia response and integration system so incredibly special, because your body does all the releases, the repositions, and the healing itself. So you basically are doing the healing session. We as a practitioner will just connect the healing, the points or communication centers, and your body does the rest. So it receives the healing very differently. All right, so we're going to bring this into the whole glute aspect. We're going to run a neutrality communication sequencing right through into that left shoulder. Okay, this can give you a lot of cranial pressure as it releases. We're working with quite a strong softening aspect through the spine, the ribs, into the hips, the pelvis. Sure, okay, that's going right through into feet as well. So that's almost like a major fascial stabilizer that's readjusting there. Okay, Team J's popped in again. All right. So now that we've done the releases through there, all right, cranium, if you did experience a headache, that will shift now and that should release. You may just have a bit of like awareness through the top center of the head. All right, so we'll just clear that. Okay, all right, so let's see. All right, that's looking much, much better. Okay. All right, so we're going to do the same pelvic release onto the right side of the body. It's not specifically coming up as a priority as such, but more as a nice to have. So it's possible that there's some people on the group who actually experienced the release in the pelvis and really liked it. So Bear's bringing through the other side. This gets so interesting. It's really good fun. Okay. All right. And it's interesting because working with the left side, there was such emotional stagnation that wanted to be just softened and released so that the body can process it and release it out. But the left side, the right side of the pelvis is just connecting back into like the emotional joy of the flexibility in experiences, and just essentially the joy of being stable in the hips and having movement. And so kind of bringing in the concept of wanting to dance and move and jump around and just kind of have fun with your body. So that was really awesome to experience there. Okay. All right, guys. Okay. Bodies are feeling really, really good. So when we work with the distance sessions, you may actually have a physiological response after the sessions. Essentially what this is that the body is changing, and from this session, your body has already experienced the shifts. You may not actually feel the shifts as they happen, or as you're expecting them to be felt or experienced, but they have already had influence. So just be part of whatever the session offers for you. I can feel the groups a lot calmer. Pelvic and coccyx is just feeling a bit sensitive, but that's normal with the realignment. As you start moving around and as you start kind of doing your thing, the body will realign and the fascial systems will essentially reposition. So even in just working the body here, we've reconnected the fascial stabilizers, we've worked with reconnection, we've worked with release, we've worked with realignment. So there's a lot that your body is working with right now. From a physiological perspective, any emotions that have been released and processed, the body will process them from a physiological perspective through the natural exit points, and that is how you experience them. So you may have them through sweat or through feeling a bit cold or extra urination or more frequent bowel movements. So however you respond to the session is absolutely fine, and it's a really lovely experience to actually just honor that. So with the physiological changes, If you do go through things like having a little bit of fatigue, or just wanting to rest a bit more, or be a little bit more quiet, or have more thirst or less appetite, let the experience just be what it is. It changes every time. So these are just regular responses that I've experienced with clients and with myself when I work on myself. So just enjoy them and let the experience be what you've enjoyed it to be. So I'm going to close off here. Essentially, when we close off the session, I'm bringing in the intention into both right and left hemisphere of the brain, just to allow the brain from a decoding perspective to receive the information that what we've worked with and the changes that we've worked with, to receive that information into both aspects of the brain, left and right hemisphere, so that the brain can receive it as its new information, and it can integrate the new information with immediate effect and with familiarity. So it just softens the change experience that the body has. When we work with intention over heart, again, we mentioned earlier in the video, but just for closing off, I always work with the heart. The heart is such a beautiful and powerful energy field. So to allow that energy field to essentially rebalance or neutralize its tensegrity is really amazing. And there, I can't see from my position, but I can just feel that there are really amazing people on this group today. So thank you all for being here. You're amazing space holders for that as well. So, okay. So when we work with the heart, I always work with the intention that the heart receives the information as its new information, with familiarity, with kindness, with gratitude, and that all cells in the body receive this information in kindness and joy. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Bear. So just as a recap, the main points that came up today in the session. So sinus, but that was more connected to snot. So a nice one to work with that is like a lymph cleanse, especially with the full moon coming up on the 10th. You want that lymphatic nice and clear. So if you're interested in different options for working with the lymph, from a juicing perspective, I've got an amazing recipe, which is it's a blood, liver, lymph cleanser. It's amazing. It tastes amazing. But that's from a juice perspective. If you're wanting tinctures, if you work with tinctures, we've got a couple of tinctures that we specifically work with, which are also really amazing and really just full of vibrational healing frequencies. And then if you're wanting, just from an exercise perspective, the exercise is really an individual experience. Depending on a really nice thing that you can actually look into is according to your blood type, what exercise suits you. And that is a really lovely way to actually get into the exercise, because it suits your blood group in kind of like a way that complements your genetic and your physical makeup. So you can play around with different concepts like these. These are just points of interest. But for today, a lot that came up. So the mucus needing to just clean out those bodies and clean out those systems. It's a bit sluggish at the moment. And then also just the emotional side of things. With all the changes that are coming up and all the changes that you're wanting to experience, you have to have a platform of expression. So however you're going to express that, find a way that works for you. And then also if you're battling with the expression, running sessions like the fascia will just help to realign all the different realign, reconnect, rebalance, however you want to word it. Just bring in the neutrality of the physiological, emotional, spiritual, mental aspects to actually support getting things moving. These can be run distantly, they can be run in person, they can be run per movement. So there's lots of flexibility around that. And then also, so the emotional side, a lot of pelvic tension, that is more from a stress perspective. So just check your stress levels. I know everyone's starting to kind of get back into the routine of things, so just check that you're not going back into that high stress habitual patterning that you were at the end of last year. Really start finding a way to nurture yourself through these experiences, so that your body receives the information gently and in nurturing of its expression. So pelvic tension, and then just the fear response. So if you are struggling with fear, look at doing certain meditations or movement meditations, coming through for fascia sessions, just to help shift that frequency. But the session that we did today, you guys should feel amazing. There's going to be so much change. And again, thank you so much for joining. This was really fun. I was looking so forward to doing this. I actually thought the 4th was yesterday, so I was really excited, and I needed to wait a whole 24 hours. So I'm really excited that we managed to get to it now. And yeah, thank you so much for being here. I can see there's questions on there, guys. I cannot read them from where I am. So what I'm going to do after the live post, I'm just going to go through your comments, and I'll put the comments underneath the video section, just answering your questions. If there are very personal things that you would like information on, or if there is something very specific in the session that resonated with you, that you need more information on, or you felt that you really connected to, that you need to ask a few personal questions, just send us a private message in the Integrated Consciousness Bodywork Facebook page, and I'll get back to you on that. But other than that, have a really, really amazing day. And thank you, Bear. He's always so fantastic with my sessions. I love working with him. But thank you so much for joining us, and have a really, really special afternoon. God bless, and lots of love and gratitude to you all. Bye.